No, you're not looking at the Power Rangers. You're looking at the Broadcast Buddies. It's another crossover episode of Here's Why You're Wrong and the eMLB Insiders. You've got myself and Brenden of Here's Why You're Wrong, JR, Tim, and Andrew of the eMLB Insiders. Gentlemen, the Broadcast Buddies are back together again. The boys are back in town. Whatever reference you choose to use.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
We're not afraid to hide our faces like the Power Rangers.
That's the crowd.
This is true.
Do I need to add in some post-crowd noise?
Yes, you do. Over me doing that. You know what we need to do? We need to have a live show where you just add in like crowd noises in the background.
This episode was filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Start booing every time Aiden talks.
Boo. Because
Boo, you stink.
Would he really
This
be
has
the
been a
villain
film
of the
waste
show, though? Would
presentation.
he really be the villain?
Who else would be?
I don't know. Maybe me.
I have a
Brennan's
t-shirt
kind of
from-
becoming the Darth Vader of the eMLB these days.
Honestly, a
He
little
really is.
bit.
Then,
I don't know.
then
Both
the
of
next
y'all.
podcast, I will wear. I've got a T-shirt from a Pusha T concert that says "You know who the villain is." I'll just wear that.
Oh.
There you go.
There you
Yeah.
go. There we
I
go.
was
Let
gonna, I was
everyone
gonna
else
say,
make up their mind.
Aiden and Brenden kind of ruffled feathers on both sides of their standings predictions on their last episode.
You know what? My absolute that is the best thing. Here's why you're wrong has done, because we have gotten
Yes.
so many people telling us that we suck. I love it.
It's exactly what we went for when we created the show.
Yes, it is.
So in other words, all of your predictions are BS. And you're
No,
just doing it for
no.
ratings.
Oh,
Oh
there's
no,
truth
we
to
spoke the truth. We
Oh,
spoke
okay.
the truth, and people are
The
afraid to
truth
hear it.
hurts. The truth hurts.
Well, it's interesting
It does.
because you both can't tell the same truth because you didn't have the same predictions, but whatever.
We're telling our truths. All right,
Yeah.
we live our truth.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. So
Enough of
we've
that.
had a lot of stuff happen since the last time we talked. We had Rule 5. We've had 8 big free agent signings. We've had a bunch of trades, 3 big ones. And then we had some fun also just by talking amongst friends. So let's start with Rule 5. We're all going to pick one Rule 5 pick. Just to give you a quick reminder, our eMLB Rule 5 draft is 1 pick, 1 round, or it's 1 round, 1 pick for each team. You can choose to pick someone or you can choose to pass. And then also as well on top of that, it is the same order used in Rule 5 as it is for the amateur draft, which is set by Commish based on how you finish in the your record, and then all the playoff teams are at the back end. So
Basically, the NFL draft.
who is going to go first? Am I leading us off here?
You're leading us off because you're on top.
All right. Exactly. Ray's on top. You heard it on my predictions episode. You heard it here now. Brennan just admitted it as well. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and for my pick that I really like, going from San Diego to the Mets, Wally Carpenter, starting pitcher. Left-handed pitcher. I think he's got 3 really nice pitches, as you see there, pulled up on OSA. I think he would fit in less as a starter, even though I really like his stamina. But I think he could be a really nice left-handed bullpen piece for a lot of teams. And I really think that Denbrew got a really nice spot. He does pitch 98 to 100 miles an hour at that 3/4 delivery, and he's neutral, which is a huge possibility about that. So I think that, he brings a lot to the table. He was taken 7th overall by the New York Mets in this Rule 5 draft.
I like it. Personally, I think he was the best player available to be selected. And the fact that he did not go earlier was kind of surprising. I still think that he has long-term. Like, he's obviously older, and he hasn't turned out the way that the Padres hoped he would when they drafted him in the first round in 2003. But I think that there's still potential he can become a starter, especially maybe with some, OST training. We'll see what happens.
I think if he wants to be a starter, that control needs to improve.
Yeah, probably.
Limit the walks, improve that control. But he's got 3+ pitches.
For sure.
Yeah, and he's got the personality traits that make you think he could continue to improve as well.
I like that work ethic.
Yeah.
All right, let's just go down the line. JR.
So I really liked Ezra Pearson, the 3rd pick by the Oakland A's.
2 guys in a row took the guys I was going to talk about. Dang nabbit.
He had an interesting profile when you look and you see, that big gap power with the little, home run power, which especially in that A's ballpark could play really well. I mean, that could end up with being a whole lot of doubles and triples for him. He's got really good plate discipline, had a really high on base percentage his couple of years in the minors. Pretty solid defense on the corner outfield spots. I think, especially for a team like Oakland that's looking to add pretty much any talent they can to their roster, I think this is a great addition for them, even if all he does is platoon a little bit against right-handers at first. I think he could turn out to be a pretty useful young outfielder for him.
I like the pick as well.
I really liked his profile. It's interesting that he has such high plate discipline and avoid K, but he apparently doesn't hit for average. But when he does, apparently he splits the gap. Plus, I think it's really interesting that he has a cannon for an arm in the outfield, but he has no home run power. It's one of these weird players that I somehow like and I would love to have on my team, because I just love players that have the atypical profile and just see if they can do well. So I like his profile here. I'm very interested to see if he does well in Oakland.
He kind of reminds me a little bit of Luis Contreras, just not it's not one-to-one with the skills, but just being a really stream player in different directions.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, and if 3 of those 4 super traits of his pan out, you've got a ball player there for several years. So
yeah, you do.
He's a good pick.
All right. Brenden?
I'm going to go with is Tim Wright, who was taken by the Padres late. I'm sorry?
3 for F and 3.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Good. I think it's kind of a little bit of a weird pick for the Padres, especially since, they have a lot of hitting depth. But taking a flyer on him isn't the worst thing in the world. If he impresses at all in spring training, he can be kept on as a bench bat. I really like his power. I really like his power. And I like the avoid K, too. He's not going to strike out a whole lot, which, for a guy who's got a power profile is pretty nice.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Brenden, about the Padres, because that was the only part of this that I thought was a little bit of a head scratcher, because Steve spent a lot of time already trying to kind of clear out his glut of first base DH types that he has. So I was a little surprised to see him take one of those in the Rule 5, where they essentially have to stay on the major league roster. But otherwise, I'm like you. I think he definitely has some good profile to him.
I do like 6'8", 225, and a switch hitter.
Yeah, the switch hitting aspect, I think, is what pushes it over the edge. And I think, like you mentioned, too, he's not going to strike out a lot with that high avoid K. But that eye discipline a little bit less, so maybe strike out a little more. I think the question is going to become, he doesn't really have anything in the infield. He lacks a lot to be desired, so he's basically exclusively a DH. Do you use him as a DH? Is he just a bench bat, especially on a team like San Diego, like you're saying? I don't know where he fits in.
At least the last couple of years, San Diego's tended to carry 14 hitters and 12 pitchers. So maybe he is the 14th guy, someone they can just, pinch hit late in games and have him DH every so often to get whoever they have DHing out in the field. I mean, there's literally no risk to taking someone in the Rule 5 draft. It's all reward or nothing. So basically, if he doesn't pan out, they just cut him loose and send him back. So
yeah, that makes sense. Andrew, finally, we went 3 for 3 on stealing your players.
Yep, and I'm the 4th player I identified as a good pick is I'm going to go with starting pitcher Carlos Rodriguez, who went from Pittsburgh to Atlanta. And at Pittsburgh, Carlos Rodriguez is probably one of the victims of the fact that Pittsburgh have a lot of good pitching prospects, and he was kind of one of those odd man out kind of situations. Because if you look at his stats there, he did pretty darn well in AAA last year with mid-3 ERA. And but I think where the real gem of this lies is if you go into the details and see what he did as a starter versus what he did as a reliever. He was pitching to the tune of a 2.5 ERA as a starter. He actually pitched worse as a reliever. So I think that they uncovered a little bit of a gem there. If he can put those kind of numbers up in the major leagues, that's all-star talent. Now, I don't think that he will, but he was pitching much better as a starter, as a reliever. So maybe you give him a chance as like your 5th starter coming out of spring training.
I mean, in worst case scenario, he catches on in the bullpen, and he's just a extra dude to provide depth.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta has lost a lot of pitching depth between expansion draft, free agency, and trades this offseason so far.
All right. Mine is Kyle Wright, the Marlins pick. This seemed to me to be up there with Clovis, probably one that seems to be ready right away. Spent pretty much the whole season at AAA for Houston, and just, was probably not going to break that rotation. So the Marlins picking him up. 4 really good pitches. Looks like he can go deep into games, fields his position well. Has struggled a little bit at times, but then had a cup of coffee in Atlanta in 2025 and seemed to do okay there. So maybe this will be the second time around for him in Miami. I think he'll be okay.
I think Miami's got really bad pitching depth, so like starting pitching depth. So I really think that this is just a nice move just to shore it up.
Yeah.
In Atlanta, he started the season for me in Atlanta in the 25 season, because that's when I took over. That 2025 season, it was sort of weird how we were using him because we weren't sure exactly what we were going to do with him. So in that 2025 season, I used an opener and had him follow behind a lot, actually. And so I traded him to Eddie at the deadline, just a straight swap, I think 1-for-1. And Eddie came back to me at the end of the season and was like, so what happened? Oh, it was in the JT Ginn trade. He was like, so how come I can't get the most out of him? And, we talked about it and he understood why. And so then after he was, I claimed him in Atlanta again, then released him. So he's just gone back and forth between Atlanta, Miami, and Houston for a while. But I think this is a really, really good pick by Eddie. I think he's going to fit this Miami team really, really well.
Oh, real quick. Oh, he's not even all that popular. That's kind of strange.
That's a weird pick for Miami.
It's a little out of character, actually. Only well known.
Yeah, but he can stand next to a famous player, and then that's okay.
That's true. That's true.
Popular by association.
Yes.
So real quick before we move on, just so everyone is aware, it was posted in the Discord, but in case you missed it, I'll quickly run down the draft order for everyone just so they see it. It'll be Montreal, Portland, Oakland, Colorado, Arizona, Toronto, the Mets, Miami, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Yankees, Atlanta, Detroit, Minnesota, Washington, Texas, White Sox, Milwaukee, Tampa, Boston, St. Louis, Seattle, Dodgers, Baltimore, Philly, San Francisco, Angels, Cleveland, San Diego, and then rounding it out with Cubs and Houston at 32. It's the draft order for 2027.
And Aiden, you're going to be pitching and catching for your team.
I pulled double duty.
He said duty.
The worst part is I was thinking that as well, but I'm not going to be the one who says it.
I was thinking it too.